Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, and I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting this evening from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm joined tonight by Stephen Young, who's running the technical aspects of our show, Adam Bernstein out in the field manning the tracking cameras and doing some still photography. I also have Michael Kane, I believe, doing some still photography for us as well this evening. If you'd like to follow along with the launch photography from tonight, here are the X handles, formerly Twitter, for our astute launch photographers, Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane. So be sure to check out their handles as well as that of Spaceflight Now for launch recaps as well as photography from tonight's Starlink 6-23 mission. In the center of your screen, you're taking a look at a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, the heart of Launch Complex 40, otherwise known as Slick 40. In addition to the crew that is helping to cover tonight's mission that I've already mentioned, we do have some tracking views from Pete Carson's as well. So be sure to be on the lookout for that once this bird leaves the pad. Speaking of which, in about a little less than an hour, Space will attempt to launch the Starlink Group 6-23 mission. Also want to note we're getting support for tonight's mission from Chuck Briggs. Really appreciate him helping us out with launch coverage tonight. This launch will be the 27th dedicated mission launching SpaceX's upgraded Starlink V2 mini satellites. Currently, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff at 8:39 p.m. Eastern. That's 0039 UTC for our viewers from around the world. If you'd like to help support our coverage of the space program, there's a quick and easy way to do that. If you just hit the like button, click subscribe, and ring the bell so you get notifications when new videos are posted and you don't miss any of our live streams. Of course, we can't do these launch broadcasts without the support of our wonderful viewers like yourselves, as well as our channel members. So thank you to everyone who's helped make a contribution to fund our coverage. Channel membership grants you access to our member-only videos, as well as live 4K views of all of our launches from the Space Coast, as well as discounts to our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Speaking of our members, just before the stream started, wanted to note and welcome one of our newest channel members, Janine Della Sera, who's joining us at the pad leader level. Thank you so much for your support, Janine. Another great way to jump into the conversation is through the YouTube Super Chat feature. Following the footsteps of folks like Mel Roberts Harold. Thank you so much, Mel, for being with us again tonight. Good to see you back again. Thank you for the $10 Super Chat donation. Mel says, hey, y'all. Back to watching on the TV in our living room. No comparison to Psyche from the top of the launch squadron building like we got to do last week, but happy to be watching. It's quite a place to see a Falcon Heavy go off. But of course, seeing a Falcon 9 from the comfort of your own home isn't too shabby. Thanks again for the support, Mel. We're now T minus 53 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. We're less than 20 minutes away from the point at which the launch director will give the results of the go for the start of propellant load for tonight's launch. If you haven't been with us on a recent Starlink mission, SpaceX is no longer providing mission audio ahead of the final 5 minutes of the count. But because we do have extensive experience in covering SpaceX and Falcon 9 missions, so we'll be able to guide you through the count, talk about some of the visual cues to let us know that we are likely on track. SpaceX is running the countdown for this mission from its Hangar X site here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. It's a facility where they refurbish Falcon boosters and prepare them for future flights. In fact, the booster on deck tonight is going for its 16th launch. Not quite the pack leader. That distinction belongs to boosters B-1058 and B-1060, who have each notched 17 flights to date. But this one bringing up the second spot. SpaceX also has support for this launch, in part from the control room at their headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Again, SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff right at the end of the launch window today. That is 8:39 p.m. Eastern, 0039 UTC for our folks around the world. If needed, SpaceX does have 6 backup opportunities tomorrow, Wednesday, October 18th. That starts at 4:55 p.m. Eastern, lasting until 8:23 Eastern. Weather just about as good as it gets for tonight's launch opportunity. It's been a nice, crisp day here in the Sunshine State. Lots of sunshine to be had. In fact, the 45th Weather Squadron's launch forecast pegged tonight's liftoff weather at 95% favorable for this launch opportunity. Just a few cumulus clouds in the area, but looking pretty pristine from a weather perspective. If they need to shift to their backup window tomorrow, launch opportunity looks pretty good weather-wise as well. 45th has launch forecast standing at 90% favorable, so just about as good as it is today. T-minus 50 minutes, 28 seconds and counting. As we are continuing to step through the count, let's go ahead and take a look at our countdown timeline for tonight's mission. Again, as I mentioned, at T-minus 38 minutes, the launch director would verify the go for propellant load. If that go is given, the process would start at T-minus 35 minutes. Rocket-grade kerosene, otherwise known as RP-1, will start to be loaded on both the first and second stages of the rocket. Also, liquid oxygen will start flowing aboard the first stage, also at T-minus 35 minutes. Then at T-minus 16 minutes, liquid oxygen or LOX will start flowing onto the second stage of the Falcon 9. Before that, at right about T-minus 20 minutes, 20 seconds, we'll see the start of the so-called big vent from the strongback. Happens there as the feed lines are chilled. T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps. That's an important step because it helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes from liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strongback retract begin from the Falcon 9 rocket. You'll see the clamp arms just underneath the payload fairings open up. And then the transport erector or the strong back will recline about 1.5 degrees, just a slight lean back from the Falcon 9, and will stay there until liftoff. At that point, the strong back will pull back much more quickly to clear for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 2 minutes out, liquid oxygen loading should be complete, at which point the Falcon 9 will be fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. Then in the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for liftoff, 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command will be issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 engines ignite and are healthy, the flight computer will give a command for the hold down clamps to release. The Falcon 9 will take to the skies at T0. Again, currently targeting that liftoff at 8:39 p.m. Eastern. It's coming up in 47 minutes, 52 seconds from now. Now T-minus 47 minutes and counting. Want to thank Chuck Briggs for, again, helping us out with our launch coverage tonight. These launch views coming from near the Cape. This is a good vantage point because it gives us an opportunity to talk about one of the newest additions to the pad here, Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. You see in the center of your screen, of course, the transporter erector, and just beyond that, the Falcon 9 rocket. But to the left of that, that silver tower structure, that is the crew and cargo access tower that SpaceX has been building to support cargo and crew missions from this pad. Construction started on that earlier this year. This will allow SpaceX to have redundancy between this pad and Launch Complex 39A here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. In fact, in just the last couple of days, SpaceX added the fourth and final segment on top of that tower. Moving forward, they'll add the crew access arm and start to undergo testing of this. TBD on exactly when NASA and SpaceX will start using this for commercial resupply services or CRS missions to the International Space Station. But NASA officials have said previously that before crew launches from this pad, they will likely use it to support a cargo mission. So look for a Dragon to fly from 40 before we see a crew mission coming from here. And again, this is mainly to be used as backup and redundancy for SpaceX's operations over at 39A. That pad, of course, the only one that's currently supporting Falcon Heavy launches like the one we saw for the Psyche mission recently, last Friday. And it does take a number of weeks for SpaceX to turn the pad around between Falcon Heavy operations and Falcon 9 launches, so having the ability to launch crew and cargo from this side as well will be important for SpaceX and NASA moving forward. This is the vantage point of the tower on the rocket from here at the press site. So just to give you another perspective on that new tower segment, you can see there just beyond the crane, it's just covering up or sort of boxing in the payload fairing there. There's a little bit more of a pushed in perspective on that. Now T-minus 44 minutes and counting. Taking a peek in the live chat before I lose this notification. Do want to thank and welcome Jesse Mason for joining us at the mission specialist level. Thank you so much, Jesse, for joining us and supporting us with channel membership. Really appreciate that. Jesse, like our other channel members, now has access to those 4K views for our live launch coverage. Also want to thank Simon Garibaldi for his 2 super chat donations, $7. Really appreciate the support, Simon. And lastly, for now, I want to thank one of our, or 2 of our moderators here in the live chat, Astro Joe and Stephanie B, who both have membership anniversary notifications popping in here. Astro Joe being one of our members for 15 months. Those reinforcements have arrived. Welcome in here, Astro Joe. And Stephanie B has been a member with us for 7 months. Appreciate you both for membership support as well as for helping keep things kosher in the live chat. Y'all are always great, so we really appreciate that. Now T-minus 42 minutes, 2 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 40 minutes, 25 seconds and counting. As we come up on 8 o'clock here on the East Coast. Want to take a quick look through the mission stats for tonight's Starlink 6-23 launch. This is where the chips will fall once this Falcon 9 takes off and sends those Starlinks up to low Earth orbit tonight. This will be the 16th flight of the Falcon 9 booster 1062. This will be the 264th Falcon 9 launch to date. This will mark SpaceX's 70th Falcon 9 launch of 2023. The 208th Falcon booster reflight, so a flight of a booster that has gone up at least once. This is SpaceX's 74th orbital launch of 2023, their 88th orbital launch in the last 365 days. This will be the 149th orbital launch from Pad 40, the 204th overall launch from this pad, and this will be the 58th orbital launch from Cape Canaveral in 2023. A T-minus 39 minutes and counting. We're just about a minute away from when the launch director would give the results of that go, no go poll for the start of propellant load. Again, as a reminder, because SpaceX is not issuing the mission audio at this time, we will not hear that call out. But as you take a look toward the base of the Falcon 9 rocket, should start to see some frost forming in a ring as fueling gets underway. Again, that process will start at T-minus 35 minutes, assuming SpaceX is continuing to target liftoff tonight at 8:39. We really appreciate the more than 6,700 of you that are joining us for our live launch coverage this evening. If you haven't already, there's a quick and easy way to help support what we do here at Spaceflight now. If you just hit the like button, it allows the YouTube algorithm to bring this live coverage to even more people. Now T-minus 35 minutes and counting. At this point, SpaceX should be starting the process of fueling the Falcon 9 rocket with RP-1 and liquid oxygen on the first stage. Kerosene will start flowing onto the second stage at this time. Do want to thank Chris Mars for $2 super chat donation. Says watching from the NASA Causeway at KSC. Hope you got some good views from there, Chris. And a couple of new channel members. I want to welcome Bob England at the pad leader level, as well as DL Hatton. Really appreciate the both of you being here, getting access to those 4K views, as well as discounts on our online shop. This is shop.spaceflightnow.com. And to Cheers GXP for $1 super chat donation. Thanks, Cheers. Cheers to you. And as fueling is now getting underway, I want to go ahead and take a look at where this Falcon 9 rocket will be flying once it leaves the pad. Let's go ahead and talk trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9 rocket will be lifting off from the pad there on the right-hand side of your screen. That is Slick 40, Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, will fly in a southeast trajectory towards the Caribbean. Following stage separation, the first stage will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. The one on deck tonight is just read the instructions. The upper stage will continue on with the Starlink satellites. The fairing halves will jettison a little bit downrange of the map you see here on your screen. SpaceX will use one of its 2 East Coast recovery ships to scoop up those fairings. Tonight, they're using Bob. It, of course, with the other recovery ship, Doug, of course, were named after the former NASA astronauts who kicked off the commercial crew era for SpaceX, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, with the Demo 2 mission. Now T-minus 32 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. T-minus 31 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. Take a look at the base of the Falcon 9 rocket. You can start to see a little bit of vapor forming a ring near the bottom of the first stage booster. Good sign that fueling is in fact underway, which does commit SpaceX to the T0 liftoff at 8:39 p.m. T-minus 31 minutes, 11 seconds and counting. Want to bring us to some views from our friend Pete Carsons, who's down in the Vieira area, giving us a nice little peek at Saturn tonight from his tracking camera that will have eyes on the Falcon 9 once it leaves the pad. Always nice to bring some views from our solar system neighbors out there, and we've got some nice views of Saturn with that. You can see those iconic rings of this gas giant. So thanks to Pete for bringing us these Saturn views tonight. Really appreciate that. If you recall, a few launches ago, Pete was able to show us a couple of the moons of Jupiter as well, Europa and Io. In fact, we are now less than a year away from the launch of another key NASA mission that will be using a Falcon Heavy rocket, that being Europa Clipper, which is getting close to completing assembly of the spacecraft in the clean room over at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab over in Pasadena, California. And that will launch, in fact, using the same side boosters that were used on the Falcon Heavy that launched the Psyche mission. So you'll be seeing those boosters back in action again for Europa Clipper for the last time on that mission. Before that, they'll fly the USSF-52 launch for the U.S. Space Force. Now T-minus 29 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 28 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. You're starting to see that vapor coming off the first stage, as I mentioned. Not quite as prominent tonight as it has been some other nights. Reason for that being, and I will say fortunately as a Florida resident now, we're having quite a bit less humidity today than we have for previous launches, so the vapor forming is a little bit less striking than it is some other times, but fueling is in fact underway on the Falcon 9 rocket supporting the Starlink 6-23 mission tonight. Now T-minus 27 minutes and counting. We were just talking about one of our gas giant neighbors. Let's go ahead and turn to the other. Once again, from the camera views of Pete Carson's, we're taking a look at Jupiter and some of its moons, the Galilean moons. Again, NASA's Europa Clipper mission getting ready to launch less than a year from now to one of those moons, Europa. The mission, very aptly called the Europa Clipper, launching aboard a Falcon Heavy rocket with SpaceX. That'll be the second NASA mission using a Falcon Heavy rocket. So thanks to Pete again for bringing us Jupiter and its moons tonight, right after we got some lovely views of Saturn. Now T-minus 25 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. Taking a peek at the live chat, want to welcome Gail Squibb to channel membership at the mission specialist level. Welcome aboard, Gail. Thanks for joining us. As well as Universal Law for $5 super chat. Really appreciate the support. A couple of others to thank. Simon Garibaldi coming back in again with a 20 euro super chat. Really appreciate that. Calling for world peace, always something to strive for. Really appreciate the support, Simon, and for the message there. Certainly could use peace. Danny with a $2 super chat, saying it's Rylan Maine's first time watching a rocket launch. Well, it is pretty optimal night for a launch tonight. So thank you, Danny, and I hope you all enjoy the launch tonight. Again, that's targeting liftoff at 8:39 p.m. Eastern. And lastly, for now, I want to thank Robert Gallagher for joining channel membership at the mission specialist level. Really appreciate the support, Robert. And while we certainly rely on and appreciate the support of our channel members and those who donate using the YouTube Super Chat feature, there's another, or say using the YouTube Super Chat feature, I should note, like Rafael Castillo, the $5 Super Chat, saying that watching from his porch in East Orlando, and SG, one of our regulars, with a $5 Super Chat, joining us once again. Welcome back, SG. There's another quick and easy way that you can help support us. For the 9,400 of you watching us live, if you just hit the like button, it'll allow more folks to find our coverage through the YouTube algorithms. That's a quick and easy way to help us out, just by hitting the like button. Now T-minus 23 minutes, 31 seconds and counting. T-minus 22 minutes, 36 seconds and counting. Just about a couple of minutes away from the start of the big vent. You'll see quite a bit of venting coming from the strong back there. That is now behind the crew and cargo access tower from our vantage point here. Eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed the flashing lights that were going back from right to left on the screen that we saw going left to right earlier on. Believe that to be a Coast Guard or security helicopter making sure that the area is clear around the pad before this rocket lifts off tonight, and the keep out zone is free of any marine vessels. Taking a look at where things stand on the launch landscape for SpaceX in the last several years. Coming into tonight, there were 73 launches so far in 2023. Of course, SpaceX going for launch 74 with the Starlink 6-23 mission in just 21 minutes from now. On board, 22 Starlink satellites. This is a photo from before the first flight, or before a previous flight of another Starlink launch. This is the 27th launch of Starlink V2 minis. And this will be the 47th overall Starlink launch in 2023. Each of these V2 minis comes in at about 1,760 pounds, or about 800 kilograms. After the solar panels unfurl, they have a wingspan of 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers. They were built in Redmond, Washington, near Seattle. While SpaceX themselves hasn't published a rendering or a photo of the V2 Mini Starlinks in their operating configuration on orbit, do have a picture of what they look like. This photo was taken by the Australian company HEO Robotics from one of its satellites. They claim this was the first direct observation of a Starlink V2 Mini. Here in this photo, you can see the two solar panels extending from the main body of the satellite. T-minus 19 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. You can see the big vent underway. Another good sign that fueling is, in fact, moving forward on the Starlink 6-23 mission, again targeting a T0 liftoff of 8:39 p.m. tonight Eastern Time, 0039 UTC. Now T-minus 17 minutes, 55 seconds and counting. Less than 2 minutes away from the start of LOX loading on the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. Fueling is on track, though, based on the timing of the big vent. Want to thank a couple more folks for their support this evening. Mike Zedek for $5 super chat donation. Really appreciate that, Mike. Chris Mars, $2 super chat. At that point, it was, I believe, 24 minutes to lift off. Going door knocking, I suppose. Going to see some neighbors before liftoff. But also appreciative to P. Carson's for the planet views of Jupiter and Saturn, as are we. And welcome to Dan Montgomery for joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Really appreciate the support, Dan. And thank you to the now more than 12,000 of you who have joined us for our live launch coverage tonight as we approach T-minus 16 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Again, LOX loading will start in the next less than 30 seconds now as you see the end of the big vent there. Now T-minus 15 minutes and counting. Want to thank Tim Bellwood for a very generous $20 super chat saying, hello, love your feeds. Thank you. Well, thank you, Tim. Really appreciate the support. It's folks like you that allow us to keep doing these live streams, as well as our channel members like Ward Spose. Let me know how to pronounce your name correctly, Ward. But regardless, welcome to channel membership. Really appreciate your support at the pad leader level, as well as, excuse me, Tim Bellwood, who's also joining channel membership at the pad leader level. Both of them now joining our other members with live 4K views of all of our launches from here in Florida. Now T-minus 14 minutes and counting. As I mentioned earlier, this will be the 16th time this booster has flown so far. So as the countdown continues, let's go ahead and take a look at the history of this booster, since it has quite a pedigree on it. This is B1062 that is going to be making its 16th flight tonight. Its debut was back on November 5th, 2020. That was for the launch of the GPS-3 space vehicle, or SV-4. Built by Lockheed Martin, this was the fourth of the newer version of the U.S. Space Force's GPS constellation. Has the nickname Sacagawea, named after the Shoshone woman who guided Lewis and Clark on their expeditions in the 1800s. Next up came the June 17th launch of the GPS-3 SV-5 satellite. That GPS satellite was named Neil Armstrong, who of course was the first person to set foot on the moon. The third launch of this booster was, in fact, a crewed launch. First time this booster sent humans up to orbit on the Inspiration 4 mission that launched the Crew Dragon Resilience. In fact, this booster holds the record for SpaceX with the fastest turnaround time of any booster between flights at just 21 days. That record was set between the Inspiration, or excuse me, that's coming up in just a moment here. I'm jumping the gun. The fourth launch of this booster was January 6, 2022. That was the Starlink 4-5 mission with 49 version 1.5 satellites on board. Fifth up was on April 8th, 2022. This was the second crewed mission for this booster when it launched the Crew Dragon Endeavour and the Axiom 1 private astronauts to the International Space Station. And it was at this point that this booster set the turnaround record between the Axiom 1 mission and the Starlink 4-16 mission, which came up 21 days, 6 hours, and 10 minutes later on April 29th. Still stands as the shortest turnaround time for not only this booster, but for all of the boosters. It beat the old record that was held by booster 1060 by nearly a week. Seventh flight for this booster came on June 8th, 2022 with the NileSat 301 mission, communications satellite. Flights 8 through 12 were a series of 5 Starlink missions. They were Starlink 4-25 on July 24th, 4-27th on August 19th, Starlink 4-36 on October 20th, Starlink 5-1 on December 28th, and Starlink 5-4 on February 23rd. The 13th flight came on March 9th, 2023. That was the OneWeb 17 mission, launching a batch of 40 OneWeb broadband internet satellites. This would be the third and final dedicated launch of OneWeb satellites for SpaceX. Those satellites, in fact, built right here on the Space Coast at the Airbus OneWeb Satellites facility. T-minus 10 minutes, 15 seconds and counting for this mission. This booster then launched its 14th flight on the Arabsat 7B mission, also known as Batter 8, going up on May 27th of this year. And finally, the Starlink 6-7 mission on July 28th. Now T-minus 9 minutes, 42 seconds and counting, till this bird flies again. Now T-minus 9 minutes and counting. Taking a peek at the live chat. Want to thank Becca Riz for a $5 super chat donation. Really appreciate that, Becca. She says, so grateful for the coverage. Love hearing the feeds. We love bringing them to you, Becca. Thanks for the support. As we come into the final 8.5 minutes before liftoff, let's go ahead and step through the parts of the Falcon 9 vehicle, the workhorse for SpaceX, standing tall at 70 meters, 229 feet, with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Most of that is made up of the first stage of the rocket. As I mentioned, this one having flown 15 times before, going for number 16 tonight. The base of the first stage, you can see in that inset image on the right-hand side, are the 9 Merlin engines which power the rocket. They burn a combination of rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs that'll be used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Just read the instructions tonight. Above the first stage is the inner stage. It's a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. That image on the right-hand side, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These titanium winglets provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, like a giant dart heading towards its bullseye on the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are the 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. At first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. The second stage engine nozzle also housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, upper stage powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 22 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC engine burns the same propellant mix, kerosene and liquid oxygen, same as the first stage. Now T-minus 6 minutes and counting. Last up, payload fairings, keeping the Starlink satellites nice and safe on their ascent. It's made up of a carbon composite material, 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, and 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The 2 halves of the payload fairing will be recovered by the drone ship Bob a little bit farther down, and they gently splash down the Atlantic Ocean using parachutes. The fairing house will be brought back to Cape Canaveral along with the booster to be refurbished and turned around for flight once again. T-minus 5 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. Things continue to look good for a T0 liftoff at 8:39. Coming up on the point where the strong back retract will begin. Again, that's when the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open, and the transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Stay in that position until liftoff 5 minutes from now.
Back retract has started.
And as we enter in the last 4 minutes of the count, we are getting mission audio now from SpaceX. As you heard, the strong back retract has begun. You can see there those clamp arms opening up just beneath the payload fairings, as I mentioned. Now T-minus 3 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. Want to just note the discrepancy between our countdown clock and that of SpaceX. Ours is keeping real time. The one on the SpaceX feed is a slight delay. So as I call out certain things and make you aware of them in real time, also try to be cognizant of the SpaceX delay, as may see some things on a slight delay as we pull up this visual as well. Now T-minus 3 minutes, 12 seconds and counting.
Stage 1 lock slot is complete.
And we hear that call out that stage 1 lock loading is complete. Fueling wrapping up as we enter the final 2.5 minutes of the count. Now less than 2 minutes, 30 seconds to go. In less than a minute, we should hear a call out that second stage LOX loading is complete. Hearing some of the noises of the fueling and venting from the rocket as we are now just over 2 minutes to liftoff. If you haven't already, if you can go ahead and hit the like button, help more people find our coverage.
Stage
in
2
last
LOX load is complete.
couple minutes here before we get liftoff. Now just 1 minute, 39 seconds away. And the venting you're seeing now is the process of SpaceX purging the strong back propellant lines. It's part of their procedure prior to launch. Things continue to move on track for a liftoff in 1 minute, 13 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 1 minute and counting. Just before liftoff, keep an eye towards the bottom of the Falcon 9 rocket for a little flash of green. That is the T-tab ignition.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
The T-tab ignition fluid. Hear the call, Falcon 9 in startup. And T-minus 40 seconds and counting. Should the launch director give the go for launch call momentarily.
Go for launch.
And there we have it. SpaceX targeting liftoff, less than 30 seconds.
T-minus 30 seconds.
15 seconds. And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket, sending up 22 Starlink satellites on the Starlink 6-23 mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the pad. Now 25 seconds into flight. "35 seconds into flight, we're hearing the roar of those 9 Merlin engines here at the press site. Let's listen in. Now T plus 50 seconds, the Merlin should be throttling down as the vehicle approaches max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Getting some great tracking views, this coming from Pete Carson's. And our own Adam Bernstein tracking here from the press site. Here's the call out for max Q. Now about a minute and a half into flight. These views coming from Chuck Briggs down in Vieira. Some great tracking views from our team across the Space Coast here. This coming from Pete Carson's and Chuck Briggs. Now 1 minute, 54 seconds into flight. We're coming up on the point of main engine cutoff, or MECO, where the 9 Merlin engines will shut down. It'll be followed in quick order by stage separation and ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine. Jettison of the payload fairings will come up shortly after that. There's some stunning colors from Pete Carson's tracking camera. Now just about 2.5 minutes into flight. You see their main engine cut off. Stage separation. And there we go. Here's the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engines. And you're seeing the slight delay there on the SpaceX feed. You see just a view of the Space Coast there on the right-hand side before the MVAC came to life. A little bit of a jellyfish effect coming from that Merlin vacuum engine. Oh, and you can see the payload fairings glinting, the little bit of light from the sun perhaps with the rocket being high enough. There's the delay. The Starlink satellite's now exposed to the vacuum of space for the first time. Now 3.5 minutes into flight. Things continue to go nominally for this mission. Continuing to get some great tracking views. This is from our own Adam Bernstein on a pretty much crystal clear night here in Central Florida. Really able to get some nice effects from the Merlin vacuum engine propelling that Falcon 9 upper stage. These views coming from Pete. Now T plus 4 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. Coming up in less than 2 minutes, the stage 1 entry burn will begin. That entry burn will last 24 seconds. Still getting some great tracking views now, nearly 5 minutes into flight. These are the onboard camera views from SpaceX, the glow of the Merlin vacuum engine on the right-hand side of your screen, darkness from the cameras of the first stage booster, and there's an internal view of that booster making its way back. You can see the altitude on the first stage booster continuing to drop as we come up on the entry burn beginning. Its speedometer is still continuing to climb, but you'll see that drop pretty rapidly as the entry burn begins. As the Falcon 9's first stage booster starts to hit the brakes, making its way back down toward the drone ship. Just read the instructions. Now T plus 6 minutes, 8 seconds in real time. This is when the entry burn is beginning. Of course, we're looking at the SpaceX feed. Oh, there we go. You see the entry burn in real time. This coming from Pete Carson's. Passing through some clouds right now, which is why the light is going in and out. The entry burn will last just a few more seconds here. That is the official end of the entry burn. You can still see it on the delayed SpaceX feed there on the left-hand side of your screen. The hypersonic grid fins visible through the flame of the Merlin engines. Some good call-outs from SpaceX as we come up on the 7th minute of flight. Next up at T plus 8 minutes, 7 seconds, the landing burn will begin. Unfortunately, this is likely low enough on the horizon and far enough out that our ground tracking cameras won't be able to spot the landing burn. more than likely. So we'll turn to SpaceX for live feeds from the drone ship as well as from the first stage booster as it makes its descent. Now 7.5 minutes into flight.
Stage 1 transonic.
The call at stage 1 transonic. The first stage booster now traveling slower than the speed of sound as we are coming up on the start of the landing burn. Less than 10 seconds in real time. Again, the time you want to watch for the visual, though, is the SpaceX count-up clock there.
Stage 2 nominal trajectory.
To the bottom of your screen. Landing burn will begin in just a few seconds.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Yep, well, there you go. Views from the drone ship should be coming up on the right-hand side of your screen.
Stage 2 terminal guidance. Landing lead deploy.
And touchdown.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
This booster now having launched and landed for its 16th time.
MVAC shutdown.
Hear the call for MVAC shutdown as SpaceX ends views of its telemetry on its feed. The Falcon 9 upper stage now continues on in a coast phase until T plus 53 minutes 59 seconds when the engine will reignite for a 2-second burn, setting up for Starlink satellite deployment at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes and 17 seconds. Taking a look back now at the launch pad here. Now devoid of its Falcon 9 rocket, having successfully launched its latest mission. Now that this one's in the books, let's take a look at the now updated mission stats from the Starlink 6-23 mission. Again, this was the 16th flight of a Falcon 9 booster for tail number 1062. This was the 264th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 70th Falcon 9 launch of this year. This was the 208th overall Falcon booster reflight, a flight of a booster that's made at least one mission up and back. This was SpaceX's 74th orbital launch of 2023, its 88th orbital launch in the last 365 days. Closing in on 150, this was launch number 149 from Pad 40 over Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, the 204th overall orbital launch from that launch pad. And for our Space Coast, this was the 58th launch of 2023 between Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and NASA's Kennedy Space Center. And as we were getting into the final minutes of the count, I wasn't able to keep as close an eye on the live chat. Let me pop back over here. Thank some of the great folks who have been helping support our coverage through the final moments of the count and into liftoff. Hopefully the live chat doesn't reload before I can get to all of them. I want to thank Brad Hedinger for a $5 super chat saying greetings. Spaceflight now friends, chilling in the backyard with best friends Fire Pit and Mai Tais. Let's do this. That sounds like a pretty good Tuesday evening to me, especially on an evening such as this. Not a lot of humidity and no clouds. Some great launch viewing opportunity. Don Lefevre, apologize, Don, if I mispronounced your last name there. The $10 super chat donation, thank you, Don, says you could see it beautifully from the west coast of Spring Hill, Florida. That is excellent to hear. T plus 12 minutes, 28 seconds and counting into this flight. Scrolling on down, trying to not miss anything. SG with a $3 super chat and a thumbs up pair. Thank you, SG. Really appreciate you being here again. Roseanne DeVasto with a $20 super chat. Really appreciate the support at that level, Roseanne. Saying love the respectful low-key commentary. Well, we love that you are here joining us and supporting us. Happy to bring it to you. And let's see if there's anyone else I may have missed. Callistia Lee with a $2 super chat saying, thank you for another amazing launch coverage. Really appreciate the support, Callistia. Not only supporting with a super chat, but also being a channel member. Really appreciate the support. And let me see if I missed anyone else. I don't think I did. Oh, David Rosenblum with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, David, for helping support us here. And I think that was everyone. Looks like one of our channel members, Janine Delacero, said she caught it at the executive airport view. Said instead of seeing it to the east, saw it launching up, and its trajectory was amazing. So some folks getting creative with their launch viewing. I mean, with SpaceX launching about once every 4 days, you've got a lot of opportunities here in Central Florida to get creative and see what you can come up with. Herculean Discovery with a £2 super chat, saying great photography filming from Cambridge, England. Thanks for joining us from Cambridge. That's fantastic. And Wowzer's Dog with a $10 super chat donation. They're first on one of our live streams. Thank you so much, Wowzer's Dog. Love the handle. And so because SpaceX, again, not providing mission audio or trajectory data, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our coverage tonight. I want to thank our wonderful friends who have been helping us with tracking this evening, Chuck Briggs and Pete Carsons. Always appreciate having them on board, and with the night as clear as tonight, got some excellent tracking opportunities from the both of them, so really appreciate that as well. And of course, for local launch photography from here on the Space Coast, if you want to check out our two ace photographers, Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane, these are their handles on X. So you can go ahead and follow them if you're not already, to keep up with launch photography and other photo opportunities from here and around the country, to be frank. Michael just got back from shooting the annular eclipse. He's got that up on his channel, or his feed, as well as Adam. Also got some annular eclipse photos, as well as the booster from the latest Starlink mission before tonight, the one supporting 6-22 that just came back into Port Canaveral. A great shot of that making its way back into port up on Adam's feed. So really appreciate the guys for shooting for us this evening, as always, and Adam for manning the live tracker. Just scrolling back through the live feed here. Want to thank a couple more folks whose super chats that I overlooked a little bit earlier. Ghost of Fur with a $5 super chat, watching from Houston with my good friend Valerie. Thanks for your coverage. We appreciate. Well, we appreciate you, Ghost of Fur, for supporting our coverage. Also want to thank Ross Warren, Kristen Burton for their $5 super chats, respectively. Joseph Giptenko, sorry, Joseph, if I just butchered your last name, watching across the river in Titusville, so not too far away. Rufus Zimmerman and Robert Gershovich with $1 super chats each. Ward Spose with a $2 super chat just before launch saying, let's light this candle. They certainly did. Ward also became a channel member at the pad leader level, as did Tim Bellwood. Really appreciate the both of you. John Concannon with a $2 super chat. Same with Mitchell Wilbur as well. Squishka with an $8 super chat saying, go SpaceX, exciting times ahead, and thanking us for the coverage tonight. Really appreciate the support there, Squishka. Mel joining us again with a $5 super chat, saying that she caught the launch while in the drive-thru at White Castle picking up a bag of sliders. So sounds like a tasty way to catch a launch. Don Lefevre with a $10 super chat. I think I may have actually caught that one already. And I believe... Oh, Rob G with a $5 super chat saying, got to watch it in Hialeah, seeing the booster also. That's fantastic. Norman Reitzel with a very specific $17.91 super chat, saying thank you for the excellent coverage. Currently running on Starlink, and he says he flat loves it. Well, that's good to hear. Got 22 more Starlink satellites supporting that coverage on their way up to low Earth orbit. Now 21 minutes, 15 seconds into flight. And lastly, but not least, a new channel member, William Wiest, Bill W., joining us at the pad leader level, and SO the Tiger with a $1 super chat. And that will go ahead and do it for us this evening. Thank you to everyone who has been with us throughout the duration of our live coverage. Thanks to all the folks that I mentioned previously, to Chuck Briggs, Pete Carsons, Adam Bernstein, Michael Kane. Of course, last but certainly not least, our fearless leader here, Stephen Young. I'm Will Robinson Smith, and for all of us here at Spaceflight Now, thanks for being with us. Lots to look forward to ahead in the rest of 2023, and we will see you next time.